The moon's far side was quiet, a place where no one visited unless they had a reason. Hidden under layers of rock and steel was an enormous hangar, forgotten by almost everyone except for a few officers who rotated shifts to keep watch. Inside the hangar rested Aegis, a ship that was meant to be Earth's greatest warship, but instead had become nothing more than a memory. Captain Elias Wren stood at the observation deck, staring at the silent machine. Its smooth black hull was coated with lunar dust and its lights had been off for over 10 years. To Elias, it felt like standing next to a sleeping giant. He had been given this assignment as his first command post, and at first he thought it was a joke. Watching over a dead ship didn't seem like an important job, but now, as alarms blared across every channel, he realized that this quiet post might soon become the most important place in the solar system. Captain Wren, a young officer, rushed into the control room. Earth Command is calling for an emergency briefing. The Empire's fleet has entered the system. Elias's heart sank. The Galactic Empire had always kept its distance from Earth, treating the planet as unimportant, almost primitive. But now, their Grand Armada, the largest fleet in the galaxy, was heading straight for them. The briefing was short and grim. Admiral Kessler appeared on the screen, his face pale. All orbital stations have been ordered to evacuate. The planetary defense network is too weak to stop them. Captain Wren, you are to activate Aegis immediately. That ship is our only chance to slow them down. Elias blinked. Sir, with respect, Aegis was never fully tested. We don't even know if her systems still work. Then you will find out very quickly, Kessler replied. If we lose orbit, Earth will have no defense left. You launch in 1 hour. The screen went dark, and for a long moment Elias said nothing. The crew around him looked nervous. They had been guarding Aegis for months, maybe years, but none of them had ever expected to fly her. All right, Elias finally said, his voice firm. Wake her up. The crew moved fast. Massive generators hummed to life. For the first time in a decade, power flowed through Aegis's circuits. The hangar lights flickered, and the ship's dark surface began to glow with thin lines of blue. A deep vibration rolled through the floor as the engines came online. Inside the ship, control panels lit up one by one. A calm, smooth voice echoed through the hangar. System activation complete. This is Orion, primary intelligence core of the Aegis-class warship, awaiting mission parameters. Some of the younger officers stared in surprise. They had heard stories about Aegis's AI, but hearing it speak felt strange, like meeting a ghost from history. This is Captain Elias Wren, he said, stepping closer to the ship's main console. Mission: defend Earth at all costs. Bring all weapons and engines online. Confirmed, Orion replied. Warning: live combat systems have never been field tested. Probability of system instability is 42%. Elias took a slow breath. We'll take that risk. While engineers rushed to check the ship's status, news from Earth grew worse. The Grand Armada had destroyed 2 orbital stations and was moving closer. Civilians were fleeing to underground shelters, but there wasn't enough time for everyone. At last, the final green light appeared on the screen. Aegis was ready to launch. Crew, board the ship, Elias ordered. Dozens of men and women ran across the hangar, climbing into the sleek vessel. Elias was the last to step aboard. The bridge was unlike any other ship he had seen. Every surface gleamed with polished metal and glowing holographic displays. It didn't feel like stepping into a warship. It felt like stepping into the future. Release clamps, Elias said. The hangar doors opened slowly, revealing the blackness of space. Lunar dust swirled around the ship as the engines engaged. With a roar that shook the entire base, Aegis lifted from the ground and soared out of the hangar, leaving a blazing trail behind her. For the first time in years, the forgotten warship flew. As the moon shrank behind them, Elias looked at the tactical display. Red markers filled the screen. The Grand Armada was already firing on Earth's defenses. This is it, Elias said quietly. Orion, set a course for Earth orbit. Maximum speed. Course locked. Engaging warp drive, Orion responded. A bright flash filled the cockpit as Aegis vanished into faster-than-light travel. For a brief moment, Elias felt weightless. When the stars reappeared, Earth was before them, and so was the enemy fleet. Thousands of enemy ships formed a wall of steel around the planet. Explosions flared across orbit as the Empire crushed Earth's last defenses. Elias gripped the armrest of his chair. All hands prepare for combat, and with that, Humanity's forgotten prototype warship went to war for the first time. The moment Aegis dropped out of warp, the bridge was flooded with red warning lights. The tactical display showed hundreds of enemy ships ahead, a living wall of firepower between Earth and freedom. Captain Elias Wren stood at the center of the bridge, gripping the rail. "All stations report status." "Shields at full power," said Lieutenant Vega, the ship's tactical officer. "Engines are stable," reported Chief Engineer Rahim. "But if we take too much damage, we might not be able to warp again." "Understood." Elias turned toward the forward display. "Orion, identify the nearest target." "Target locked," the calm AI voice replied. "Imperial Fighter Squadron bearing 317. Distance closing fast." On the screen, dozens of small enemy craft broke formation and sped toward Aegis, glowing like angry sparks. "They've seen us," Vega said. Elias nodded. "Prepare weapons." "Fire on my mark." The bridge fell silent. The crew's hearts raced as the enemy approached. Aegis had never been tested in real battle. No one knew if her guns would even fire. The fighters came closer, closer. And then, when they were almost in range, Elias gave the order. "Fire." The ship shuddered as energy surged through its experimental weapon systems. Beams of light lanced out from Aegis, striking the fighters with impossible accuracy. The first enemy wave exploded before they could fire a single shot. Cheers erupted across the bridge. "It works," someone shouted. But there was no time to celebrate. The enemy sent a second, larger wave of fighters. This time they fired back, and Aegis shook as blasts hammered against its shields holding at 80%. Vega called out, "Return fire!" Elias ordered. The ship's guns blazed again, tearing through the enemy squadron. Still, more and more ships appeared on the display. The Grand Armada had thousands of vessels, and they were all converging on Aegis. "Captain," Orion said, its voice still calm despite the chaos, "recommend deploying the Singularity Lance. It will neutralize multiple targets at once." Elias hesitated. The Singularity Lance was the most dangerous weapon on the ship. It had only been fired once during a test, and even then, the results had scared the scientists so much that the project was shut down. "But right now they had no choice. Charge the lance," Elias said. "Warning," Orion replied. "Charging will overload secondary power systems." "Do it," Elias said firmly. On the display, the enemy fleet tightened its net around them. Aegis spun and weaved through incoming fire, its engines glowing bright. The hum of the lance grew louder and louder, a deep, unnatural sound that made everyone on the bridge feel as if space itself was holding its breath. "Lance charged," Orion reported. "Target locked on enemy cruiser formation. Fire." For a moment, the stars outside seemed to twist. Then a beam of pure darkness shot out from Aegis's prow. It wasn't light, not exactly, and it was like watching a hole tear through reality. The enemy cruisers ahead vanished, ripped apart without a sound. The blast kept going, cutting through several more ships before fading into nothing. The entire bridge went silent. "Confirmed kills, 43 enemy vessels," Orion said. The crew stared at the display in shock. One shot had erased nearly an entire wing of the Grand Armada. "Remind me not to stand in front of that thing," Rahim muttered, breaking the tension. But the enemy wasn't retreating. Not yet. Their main capital ships were turning toward Aegis, charging their heavy weapons. "They're angry now," Vega said grimly. Elias looked at the display. The enemy's firepower was massive. A single hit from those heavy cannons could destroy them. "Evasive maneuvers," Elias ordered. Aegis rolled and darted through space, dodging blasts that lit up the void. Orion controlled the ship with precision, moving it faster than any human pilot could. "Captain, we can't keep this up forever," Rahim warned. "Our shields are draining." "Then we hit them again," Elias said. "Target their flagship's escorts. Prepare another lance shot." Once again, the weapon charged. The enemy tried to surround them, but Aegis was too fast. The lance fired a second time, and another group of enemy ships was reduced to debris. This time, the enemy hesitated. The Armada had never faced a ship like this before. "Captain," Orion said, "enemy fleet is beginning to adjust formation. They are focusing their firepower on us." "They've realized we're a threat," Elias said. "Good. Let them focus on us, and that gives Earth more time." Aegis fired again and again, carving a path through the enemy formation. Explosions lit up the darkness like fireworks. For the first time, humanity wasn't just surviving. They were winning. When the last fighter wave retreated, the crew finally allowed themselves to breathe. The bridge was filled with a strange silence. They had just done the impossible, stood against the Grand Armada and lived, but the display still showed hundreds of enemy ships left. This was just the first round, Elias said quietly. They'll be back, and next time they won't hold anything back. Outside, Aegis floated among the wreckage of destroyed ships, its black hull glowing faintly in the starlight. The forgotten warship had been awakened, and the galaxy was about to learn what it meant to challenge Earth. The wreckage of enemy ships floated around Aegis like a graveyard. Sparks from shattered hulls drifted in the darkness. The crew stood silently on the bridge, staring at the tactical display. They had survived the first battle, but hundreds of red markers still glowed across the screen, the main body of the Grand Armada. Captain Elias Wren took a deep breath. "Report. Shields at 50%, Lieutenant Vega said. Some damage to the portside hull, but all systems are still online. Engines are stable, Engineer Rahim added. But we can't take another heavy barrage like that. If they surround us, we won't last long." Elias nodded slowly. He could feel the weight of every decision pressing down on him. They had struck a blow against the Empire, but it wasn't enough. Earth was still in danger. If the Armada broke through, billions of lives would be at risk. "Orion," Elias said. "Bring up the enemy flagship." The forward display shifted, showing a massive ship in the center of the enemy formation. It was a city-sized dreadnought bristling with weapons. "That's the command ship," Orion explained. "Destroying it will disrupt the enemy fleet's coordination." Elias stared at the image for a long moment. "Then we take it out." The bridge went silent. Everyone knew what he was suggesting, a direct strike against the heart of the Armada. "That's suicide," Rahim said quietly. "They'll throw everything they have at us." "Yes," Elias agreed. "But if we do nothing, Earth falls. This is our chance to turn the tide." The crew looked at each other. Slowly, one by one, they nodded. "All right," Elias said. "Set a course straight for the flagship. Maximum speed." Aegis turned and accelerated, engines burning bright. The enemy fleet noticed immediately and began to move, closing in to block their path. "Fighters inbound," Vega called out. "Target them with pulse cannons," Elias ordered. The ship's guns flared, blasting through the incoming swarm. The bridge shook as enemy fire rained down on their shields. Aegis weaved and rolled, moving like a predator through the stars. "Shields down to 40%. Vega reported. "Keep going," Elias said. The flagship grew larger on the display, its weapons locking onto them. Aegis fired the Singularity Lance again, clearing a hole through the enemy formation. The beam cut through cruisers and destroyers like they were made of paper. "They're trying to close the gap," Orion warned. "Then we move faster," Elias said. "Push the engines to redline." "Engines overheating," Rahim said. "Cool them later," Elias replied. The ship surged forward, shaking violently. Heat warnings blared, but Aegis refused to slow down. They broke through the enemy screen, and suddenly the flagship was right in front of them, an enormous wall of armor and guns. "Target their shield generators," Elias said. "Locked," Vega replied. "Fire everything we have." Aegis unleashed its full arsenal. Missiles streaked across the void. Energy cannons roared. The Singularity Lance fired again, ripping through one of the flagship's shield towers. The enemy ship's protective barrier flickered and failed. "They're exposed," Vega shouted. But before Aegis could strike again, the flagship returned fire. A massive energy blast struck them head-on. The ship lurched violently, alarms screaming. "Shields collapsing," Rahim shouted. "Hull breach on deck 7. "Seal it," Elias ordered. "Reroute power to the front shields." The crew worked fast. Sparks rained from the ceiling. Smoke filled the air, but Aegis kept fighting. "Charge the Lance again," Elias said. "Power levels critical," Orion warned. "If we fire again, systems may overload." "Do it," Elias said without hesitation. The Lance charged, the ship humming like a living thing. The enemy flagship began to turn, trying to bring its heaviest guns to bear, but it was too slow. "Fire," Elias shouted. The beam tore through the flagship's central spine. The massive ship split apart, fire blooming along its hull. For a moment, the stars were filled with light as the command ship exploded. "Confirmed kill," Orion said. The bridge went quiet. Then cheers erupted. The enemy formation began to scatter. "Without their flagship, the Armada was in chaos. They're retreating," Vega said in disbelief. Elias allowed himself a small smile. Good, chase them off our world. Aegis turned its guns on the remaining ships, cutting down any that stayed too close. One by one, the enemy vessels jumped out of the system, leaving only wreckage behind. The crew slumped in their seats, exhausted but triumphant. For the first time in history, Elias said quietly, Earth has defeated the Grand Armada. Outside, the stars were calm again. Aegis floated among the remains of the enemy fleet, its black hull scorched but still shining. Humanity had struck back, and the galaxy would never forget it. The wreckage of the enemy flagship still burned in the void, but Elias Wren knew the battle was not over. On the tactical display, new red markers appeared, dozens, then hundreds, as more enemy ships dropped out of warp. They're bringing reinforcements, Lieutenant Vega said, her voice tight. Of course they are, Engineer Rahim muttered. The Empire won't accept losing their Grand Armada without payback. Elias stared at the display, jaw set. These reinforcements were not just another fleet. This was the Empire's vengeance. He could see the massive dreadnought at the center of the formation, bigger even than the last flagship. If it reached Earth, there would be nothing left to defend. Orion, Elias said. Calculate odds of survival if we engage directly. Probability of victory. Less than 2%. The AI replied calmly. Our weapons cannot eliminate this many targets before they overwhelm us. The crew exchanged worried looks. For the first time since this battle began, hope seemed to slip away. Then we used the Nova Core, Elias said quietly. The bridge fell silent. The Nova Core was Aegis's last resort weapon, a power source capable of releasing energy equal to a small star. Firing it would destroy everything in its path, but it might also destroy the ship itself. Captain, Rahim said, if we do this, we might not survive. I know, Elias replied, but if we don't, Earth won't survive either. He looked around the bridge. Crew, this is your decision too. Do we fight with everything we have? One by one, the crew nodded. There was fear in their eyes, but also determination. They had seen what the Empire could do. None of them wanted to see Earth suffer that fate. Orion, Elias said, begin charging the Nova Core. Warning, Orion replied. Once charged, detonation will be irreversible. Do it, Elias said. The ship's lights dimmed as power was diverted. The hum of the engines deepened, vibrating through the entire hull. A faint glow spread along the walls of the bridge, pulsing like a heartbeat. Charging sequence at 20%, Orion reported. The enemy fleet began to close in. Fighters swarmed toward Aegis, their weapons blazing. The ship shook as blasts struck the shields. Shields at 30%, Vega shouted. Hold them off, Elias ordered. By the core time! Pulse cannons roared, cutting down fighter after fighter. The Singularity Lance fired again, tearing a hole through the enemy's cruiser line. But still they came. Charging sequence at 60%, Orion said. The bridge shook violently as a heavy hit struck the port side. Warning alarms blared. Hull breach on deck 6, Rahim called. Sealing bulkheads now. Elias gritted his teeth. Keep firing. We can't let them get closer. Aegis spun through space, dodging heavy blasts. The enemy dreadnought fired its main cannon, a beam of energy that nearly split them in half. The shields flared and died. Shields offline, Vega shouted. The crew gripped their stations as sparks flew across the bridge. Charging sequence at 80%, Orion said. Engage emergency power, Elias barked. The ship's backup generators roared to life, giving them one last burst of energy. They kept firing, even as enemy ships surrounded them. Charging sequence complete, Orion said finally. Nova Core ready. Elias stood tall, looking out at the enemy fleet filling the stars. This was it. All hands, he said over the ship's intercom. Brace for detonation. Captain, Vega said softly. It's been an honor. Elias gave her a faint smile. Likewise. Firing Nova Core, Orion announced. The glow inside the ship flared blindingly bright. Outside, a sphere of white energy formed at Aegis's center, expanding rapidly. Enemy ships tried to flee, but it was too late. The wave tore through them like paper, shredding fighters, cruisers, and dreadnoughts alike. On the bridge, everyone shielded their eyes as the ship was thrown violently by the blast. Systems overload. Oded. Displays went black. Gravity failed, and the crew floated in the air as silence fell. When the light faded, the void outside was empty. The enemy fleet was gone, nothing left but drifting debris. Aegis systems failing, Orion said faintly, its voice slower than before. Reactor offline. Life support minimal. Elias looked around at his exhausted crew. They had done it. Earth was safe, for now. Send a distress beacon, Elias said. Beacon sent, Orion replied. Then the ship went dark. The crew floated quietly in the weightless bridge, surrounded by silence. No one spoke. There was nothing left to say. They had won, but at a cost that none of them would ever forget. Weeks had passed since Aegis fired the Nova Corps. The remnants of the Empire's Grand Armada were scattered across the void, burned out and broken. Earth's skies were quiet now, but the world below was buzzing with news that spread faster than any fleet could travel. Humanity had survived the impossible, and their forgotten warship had become a symbol of hope. Captain Elias Wren stood in the bridge of the barely functioning Aegis. The ship was drifting, its hull scorched and systems damaged, but it floated like a monument in orbit above Earth. The crew moved quietly, still recovering from the shock of the last battle. Many had lost sleep and some were injured, but the sense of accomplishment was heavier than any pain. Status report, Elias said, his voice steady. Life support stable, Lieutenant Vega replied. Other systems are offline or failing. We'll need a tow to return to Earth safely. Engineer Rahim rubbed his temples. If we didn't survive that Nova Corps blast, none of us would be here. The ship held together against impossible odds. Elias nodded. She's a fighter. And so are we. Below, Earth had begun to repair the damage left from the brief orbital attacks. Civilian fleets and rescue ships worked tirelessly to recover those stranded in orbit. Across the globe, people celebrated in quiet ways, cheering, waving flags, lighting lanterns, and in some cities, entire streets erupted with joy. Admiral Kessler's message came through the comms. Captain Wren, Earth owes you everything. Your actions saved billions. You and your crew are heroes of this world. Thank you, sir, Elias replied. We only did what was necessary. The Admiral's face appeared on the bridge screens, older now, but with pride in his eyes. Humanity has proven something today. The Empire may have thought us weak, but Aegis has shown them otherwise. We are no longer ignored. The words echoed in the silence of the bridge. Elias glanced at his crew. Each of them had faced death and returned. They had fought with courage and skill, and the galaxy had witnessed it. Weeks later, recovery teams finally reached Aegis. Using massive tow ships, the Black Warship was slowly brought back toward Earth's orbit. As the planet grew larger in the viewscreen, the crew allowed themselves small smiles. The battle was over, but the journey was not finished. Repairs, training, and preparation would take months, but humanity had gained something far greater than a repaired ship. It had gained confidence. On the ground, celebrations grew louder. Crowds gathered in cities listening to broadcasts from Earth Command. Flags of every nation waved together, a sign of unity born from survival. The story of Aegis spread across continents, inspiring children, scientists, and soldiers alike. Humanity had survived against a force that no one believed they could face. In the Galactic Senate, ambassadors whispered about Earth in a new tone, one of respect, even caution. Other civilizations who once ignored humanity began to reconsider. The news of a single warship defeating the Empire's Grand Armada spread like wildfire. Humanity was no longer a minor player in the galaxy. They were a power to be acknowledged. Back on Aegis, Elias walked among his crew, quietly inspecting the ship. Panels were scorched, floors dented, but the vessel still stood. It had survived the unimaginable just as its crew had. Captain, Rahim said, once we rebuild her, Aegis won't just be a prototype. She'll be the first of a fleet capable of defending Earth, and beyond. Elias smiled faintly. Then let's make sure the galaxy knows we're ready. Outside, stars glittered against the blackness of space. The wreckage of the Empire's Grand Armada slowly faded into the distance. Aegis floated silently, a reminder of humanity's courage, skill, and determination. Later, in a quiet moment, Elias looked down at Earth. It was vibrant, alive, and filled with people who now believed in themselves. For the first time in history, humanity understood that they were not defenseless. They were fighters. They were survivors. and the galaxy had no choice but to recognize it. The story of the forgotten warship had begun as a tale of dust and silence, hidden away on the moon. Now, it was a legend. Humanity had awakened, and the stars would never forget the day Earth refused to bow. Elias stood at the observation deck, looking at the planet they had saved. The bridge was quiet, the hum of systems barely audible. The crew gathered near him, weary but proud. "Earth is safe," Elias said softly, "and we'll make sure it stays that way." The ship's lights reflected in his eyes, a faint glow of the Nova Core's residual energy still pulsing beneath the hull. Aegis had survived. Humanity had survived. And for the first time, the galaxy truly feared and respected them.